Hey Team Bio, welcome to your screencast, an introduction to ecology. A screencast is a little mini lecture that I give you that you can self-pace. So you can watch this at 2x speed, or you can watch it at half speed. You can pause and rewind if you don't quite get something and listen to it again. So take notes like you would in class, and this video is always here for you. So if you want to revisit something at another time, you can play it again. There's going to be a quiz on this screencast, and it's open notes, so whatever you write down in your notes, you can use in the quiz next week. Okay, so this is your first big introduction to ecology. Ecology is the study of ecosystems. Ecosystems are composed of what we call biotic, which are living things, and abiotic. Oops, that's one word. Abiotic factors. So an ecosystem is composed of both living things and non-living things, biotic and abiotic things. So an example of this would be like a tree is a living thing, but it's living in an environment that has abiotic factors like the temperature, the amount of rainfall, the amount of sunlight, the acidity of the soil. So all of these abiotic factors are very important in determining what kind of ecosystem you are looking at. Okay, so introduction to ecology. We are going to start out the year talking about some big ideas, like physically big, talking about ecosystems, but we're also going to be talking about really tiny things like protons, electrons, and neutrons, and we're also going to be talking about what it means to be a scientist. So, big ideas. Autotroph and heterotroph, or autotrophic and heterotrophic. An autotroph is an organism that can feed itself. It's capable of producing sugar from the sun's energy. So any organism performing photosynthesis, for example, a plant, is going to be an autotrophic organism. A heterotrophic organism obtains food by eating other organisms. So humans are examples of heterotrophs. We cannot just go out and sunbathe and get our energy that way. We need to eat stuff in order to get energy and also build our own bodies. So autotrophs are also building their own cells using the energy that they harvest. We heterotrophs build ourselves from the items that we consume. So you literally are what you eat, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about. Okay. In this diagram, anything that is written in yellow represents energy. Anything that is blue represents nutrients. And when I'm talking about nutrients, I'm talking about the elements that make up living things. So carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc. And then anything in orange squiggle represents heat. Okay. There are three broad categories of organisms that we are going to be talking about this year. The first broad category is a producer. Producers are autotrophs. So, an example of a producer would be a tree or some algae or a raspberry bush. Any organism doing photosynthesis is going to be an example of a producer. They are often green, but not always. Okay, consumers are organisms that there are many different types of consumers. So herbivores, omnivores, carnivores, parasites, scavengers would all be contained within the consumer category, and they are all heterotrophs. They must eat other things in order to survive. And then our last broad category are our decomposers. And decomposers would be anything that is consuming something and then returning those nutrients to the environment. So, for example, a fungus or a worm would be an example of a decomposer. So these are also heterotrophs. Okay, so sunlight comes from the sun, strikes the earth, and some producers are going to harvest that light energy, and they're going to use it to build themselves. They take nutrients that are in the environment, and they use the sun's energy in order to make sugars that they then use to build themselves. While they're doing this, they're going to emit some energy back out as heat energy. Okay, so producers are doing their things, living their life, harvesting the sun's energy and using it to build themselves. They sometimes get eaten. When they get eaten, the nutrients that made them up, as well as some of the energy that is contained within the bonds that's holding those nutrients together, get passed on to whatever eats them. So producers are consumed by consumers. So like, for example, a cow would eat grass, and they can also be consumed by decomposers. I'm sure you've seen, I'm sure you've seen a plant with a fungus growing out of it as well. So producers can be consumed by consumers, but they can also be consumed by decomposers, in which case their nutrients and energy are passed on to decomposers. As consumers and decomposers live their life, they also emit energy out as heat. And consumers, ultimately, they are consumed as well by decomposers. So, this should be yellow. Their energy and nutrients are passed on to decomposers. Okay, decomposers take these organic, these nutrients that they consume, and they return them from the biotic cycle. So these are all biotic. Producers, consumers, and decomposers, and they return those nutrients to the abiotic environment, maybe the soil, maybe the air. Where they can in turn be used by producers again. So if you look at this graphic, you'll notice something. And that is, if you trace the blue lines around the graphic, that they always loop back around. No matter where you go throughout the cycle, they never exit the cycle. They're always contained. However, if you trace the yellow lines, you see that at some point in the cycle, they exit. So, this is the big idea that I want to communicate to you, is that energy flows through the ecosystem. A constant supply of energy is required in order to keep the ecosystem functioning, because it's always being emitted as heat. Nutrients cycle around the ecosystem. They move from biotic to abiotic and back again, but they are not lost. So the same nutrients, elements, atoms that made up the dinosaurs that make up you today. So the nutrients that we have here on Earth, they're fixed, they're not changing, but the energy that's coming in is always new, and we require a constant supply. So energy flows, nutrients cycle. Okay, that's all.